Hello, this is Yaakov Kronenberg from Jerusalem, and tonight we'll be doing a class on Piscean ascendant with Jupiter in the different signs. Tonight we'll be doing Jupiter in Aquarius. When Jupiter is in Aquarius, it falls in the 12th house. So a person who has Pisces ascendant with Jupiter in Aquarius, it has a certain difficulty. It tends to make the person more introverted, more connected with the spiritual. The person more turns away. You see, if you go forward in the zodiac, you go from 1 to 2. You go for money. Money is the commodity which is the key to this world. If you want the pleasures of this world, the first thing you need is money. Because like they say, with money you can buy whatever you want, right? So, but if a person goes from the first house in an opposite direction, so he comes to the 12th, he wants the spirituality. The 12th house rules the soul, so the person is going after more of an inner journey in this lifetime. And so if you have a Pisces ascendant, which normally rules the 12th house, Pisces is the natural ruler of the 12th house, and the ruler is in the 12th house, so it's going to be a very a sort of introverted, very person into the spiritual, into the going against the grain, going around the circle in the opposite direction. A person, a spiritual seeker, a seeker for the, if not spiritual, someone who's seeking ways to overcome their suffering. Always the Piscean is working to overcome their suffering. And that seems to be one of the main themes in the Piscean lifetime, is to get out of suffering. And so again, there's always different ways. There's the high road and then there's the low road. The high road, of course, is through service to mankind and to explore the mystic experience. The low side is, of course, the quick fix, or the take to the bottle. And tonight we're going to look at a chart of a man who actually. Let's talk a little bit more about the Piscean ascendant and. With Jupiter in Aquarius, and so Aquarians don't have that. It's a difficult combination because a Pisces is tremendously emotional, and the Aquarian is the opposite of that. Aquarian is not a very emotional type of person at all. It lives the outer life, right? The Aquarians, my experience with the Aquarians is, they don't have much of an inner life, right? They tend to be all outside. They're so outside of things that they need to look at, they need other people to tell them what they're about. They're so far outside of themselves, they don't have that inner way of looking, the Aquarians, so much. Their eyes are always on the outer, so it's a difficult combination for the Piscean to fulfill itself in Aquarian, with Jupiter in Aquarius. And sometimes it can be difficult because, again, the two signs don't work together so great, the Piscean and the Aquarian. But again, Jupiter, as always, is the planet of good fortune. So you have to realize that all Piscean ascendants, they have Jupiter as the main ruler. And Jupiter is the planet of great good fortune. So there's always a benefit in the having the Pisces as the ruler. Pisces is the planet of wisdom, and if you have wisdom, you have everything. Right? What is Shlomo? God came to Shlomo and King Solomon, and he asked him, "What do you want? I'll give you anything you want." And Solomon thought, and he said, "I want wisdom." Why? Because if I have wisdom, I'll be able to get everything. Right? And God gave him wisdom, and wisdom is the highest benefit in this world. And it's why people go on the spiritual path, is for the search for wisdom. So even though Jupiter in Aquarius in the 12th is difficult, it gives a person who has a great ability to go on the spiritual search and get to a high level. It's actually quite nice. It's because it's so Jupiterian. Tonight I want to look at a chart of a famous man who I guess he epitomizes both levels. He tried for the spiritual approach, he tried for the drug approach, he tried everything, to escape his suffering, and in the end I don't think he was very successful at all. The man's a Jewish man. His name was Allen Ginsberg. He was born with a few negatives in life. He was born, he considered negative that he was born Jewish, and he was considered negative that he was born homosexual. He was, at least became homosexual, born a homosexual. And his mother was insane. His mother was in and out of the insane asylum. And so he had a lot of, so he grew up in a very difficult home environment, and he started with all these different strikes against him, the man. And, with he had Uranus on the ascendant, which made him he felt very, very strange. He must have felt like a stranger in a strange land, and he had Mars on the ascendant. He carried a grudge on his chip on his shoulder with the Mars there. Very self-protective, Mars in Pisces. And he had Jupiter in Aquarius, the ruler in the 12th house. And he tried all different ways of escape. He got involved in the the beatniks, whatever they were. The beatniks were, they sort of broke off from society and sort of had their own, counterculture, one of the first counterculture groups. And then he got off into the spiritual path, into Buddhism, things like that, to find liberation. He was off into that, and he was very heavy into drugs. He tried the other way to escape, drug addict, alcohol, all sorts of things to escape. And you see, he had a very difficult chart. The two planets, the two planets that make the most aspect to his ascendant were Mars and Saturn. The two malefics, and Uranus on the ascendant. Like we say, the Uranus just made him, much, much too strange. It gives a lot of intelligence, the Uranus there. Uranus in mutual reception with Jupiter. He must have been a very brilliant man, but he was very erratic, right? With the ruling planet in Aquarius and in mutual reception to Uranus. He must have been very, very short-tempered with people. He must have been very... he was interested in everything under the sun. Jupiter wants wisdom. Uranus wants all different kinds. Wants to find freedom, the Iranian. But he must have been very hard for him to get close to people when you have that Uranus so strongly connected with the ascendant. And with Jupiter, I imagine it caused him a lot of isolation. He wasn't able to get close to people. So with the thing in the 12, we say a lot, right? He became a poet. He was a poet, a writer, and we see that a lot with people whose ruling planets are in the 12th house. They like isolation. They like to be alone and to write and things like that. And he had a lot of air in his chart. The sun and the moon the sun and Mercury are in Gemini, the sign of the writer, in the house of writing, the 3rd house. And so he was very, and his ruling planet was also in air, so there was a lot of air there, and he was very interested in writing, expressing himself, but a very, very difficult chart, a man who never was able to, spent his whole life, I think, trying to overcome his suffering, and I don't think he succeeded, and And just if you look at his Neptune also, we say we're going to talk a little about the co-ruler. So he's got Neptune and Leo in the 5th house, the arts. So again, another indication towards the poetry, the writing. He wanted to become famous, right? As a Neptunian, as a poet, desire for the poetry. And it made a very powerful, no it didn't, it was unconnected to both of his ruling planets were unconnected to the ascendant. So he felt like an outcast, and I think he was actually, and I thank everybody for listening.